We are delighted to have you with us today. Bioethics and health humanities are rapidly evolving, shaped by medical advances, shifting social dynamics, and a changing regulatory landscape. So, as we navigate questions around end of life care, ethical research, health disparities, and policy pressures, I think this moment calls for fresh ideas and thoughtful engagement. Today's webinar is part of a larger invitation, an invitation through our annual conference to think expansively, to engage courageously, and to imagine creative paths forward. Together, we will explore how to advocate for humanistic and ethical care amid systemic change, how to understand the implications of emerging policies, especially for the most vulnerable, and how to carry our disciplines forward with integrity and hope. Next slide. We're thrilled that the 2026 Program Committee is here to guide us through proposal formats, topic areas, and strategies for submitting a compelling and impactful proposal. In today's webinar, we'll begin with brief introductions before moving into key elements of preparing a strong proposal for this year's meeting. We'll walk through how to select the session format that best fits your idea and how to choose the most appropriate category for your submission. From there, we'll cover best practices for crafting a clear, compelling abstract that captures your contribution effectively. We'll also address frequently asked questions and conclude with time for your questions, giving you the opportunity to engage directly with the 2026 Program Committee. And if you'd like to revisit anything later, don't worry, the session will be recorded and posted on the ASBH website, freely available to all. My name is Patrick T. Smith. I am at Duke University. I have the privilege of being president of the American Society for Bioethics and Humanities. I'm going to ask and invite the members of the 2026 Program Committee to introduce themselves. Before turning to them, though, I want to say that two of our colleagues and valued members of the committee, Brian Pilkington from Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine and Valerie Sadkowski from the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, are unable to be with us today. But I do want to begin with the rest of the program committee, starting with an introduction by our esteemed program chair.
Hello, I'm so glad you're here. My name is Lori Bruce with she, her pronouns. I'm a research scientist at the Institution for Social and Policy Studies at Yale University and the Associate Director of the Yale Interdisciplinary Center for Bioethics. This is my second year on the ASBH Program Committee, and I hope you find the session helpful.
Hi, everyone. Great to have you here. My name is Bethany Bruno. I'm an OBGYN with a group called County OBGYN. We're affiliated with Yale New Haven Health in Connecticut, not too far down the street from Lori. My pronouns are also she, her. This is my first year on the program committee. We're so excited to have you here. And again, hope you find this helpful.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Campo-Engelstein, she, her. I am the chair and director of Bioethics and Health Humanities at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston. And I am delighted to be the president-elect of ASBH. I've been on the program committee, the nominating committee, and the board of directors, and so thrilled that you're joining us here today.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Lanfear. I am an assistant professor in the Ethics Center at Cincinnati Children's Hospital and the University of Cincinnati. I am a philosopher and clinical ethicist and health humanist by training. This is my first year on the program committee and really glad to be here with you all.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to see you all here. My name is Elise Smith. I'm an associate professor at the University of Texas Medical Branch. I'm also the director of research ethics and a research ethicist myself, and this is my second year on the program committee.
All right. So we can move to the first topic, which is really selecting a session format and then category. And I will kick it off with some considerations about how to choose what kind of session you might submit. And the kinds of things you want to consider are, what kind of project is it? How far along in development is it? Who else is involved with the project? Who do you want to have involved with the content you're sharing at the meeting versus, potentially delivering the content individually, right? Do you want to pull in co-authors and collaborators, discussants, etc.? Also consider, what do you want to get from the session? What is beneficial to you in developing your work or taking your work forward or sharing it with our community? What do you want the audience or attendees to get from the session? So let's dive into the different kinds of session types on the next screen. And I'm not going to go in order. I'm actually going to kind of, you see this reference here, but I am going to talk through each of these because I want to think a little bit initially through what might be the most common kind of presentation type for those who've either presented at conferences in the past or attended conferences, and that's usually the paper submission. We might think of this as the sort of traditional conference presentation, though you don't need to be traditional in how you deliver it. So this is going to be a single or multi-authored paper. It's going to reflect research and scholarship that typically makes some new contribution or intervention into your field in bioethics and health humanities. It's going to be presented by one person, even if the project itself is multi-authored. And so while this is called a paper presentation, right, you'll have 15 minutes to sort of give your paper, give your presentation with some time for Q&A. This doesn't need to be developed fully into a paper at the time of submission, and it certainly doesn't need to be a paper you read to the audience. In fact, we'd encourage probably against that. But it is the kind of idea that can be contained in a paper that you might submit to in a graduate seminar, eventually to a journal, and you want some feedback on, for example, prior to polishing or finalizing it for publication. That's kind of how you want to think about this type of submission category. If you have an idea, though, that's likely to become a paper, but is maybe in an earlier phase of development, this can be a really great choice for the flash presentation, right? So that's that work in progress or developing project. It's going to be one presenter. You'll have only 5 minutes, right? So the idea is to kind of give the kernel of the idea or argument and then be able to have, some conversation with the attendees of that session to get feedback and help you further develop that idea. A few session types are really great for convening a group of scholars around a topic. And so one of those is going to be the panel session, right? So the panel is really ideal for exploring a topic from multiple dimensions or perspectives. It allows you to bring 2 to 4 people together around an issue. Panels can be a great way to contribute different disciplinary expertise to a topic, such as clinical, ethical, and legal perspectives, contributing to a complex clinical ethics issue or healthcare policy topic, or maybe illustrating how different disciplines could contribute to new and different ways of understanding a discussion, for example, within the health humanities. And we like to think that panels are strongest when they bring together speakers who offer not only maybe different kinds of disciplinary backgrounds, but also potentially represent different regions, different types of institutions, maybe different career stages. And then also we want those panel presentations to have a plan for using that 60 minutes you get to also engage with the audience in some meaningful way. Another kind of way to bring a group of people together, but maybe more with explicitly different views on a topic, is the debate format. So the debate is maybe what it sounds like, a debate where presenters are going to take different views. It's 2 to 4 people, they'll have an hour, and it's really oriented around an issue or topic in which speakers will have explicitly different perspectives, with the idea that they'll be arguing from and for that specific view on an issue. There might be some friction, and that could be exciting to watch in that difference of perspectives. So if your proposal is thinking in a group about a topic, but can't maybe clearly articulate the differing views of the speakers, then you might consider a panel rather than a debate submission. Now, there's also a few formats for creative works and projects. So one is the artistic or creative performance or exhibition, and this is a live performance or viewing that can include up to 4 presenters with an hour of time. It doesn't need to be a single performance, right? It could be a series of readings or performances. Viewing works with a discussion from the artists, sharing of a performance with an audience discussion. So you can really think, again, creatively here. And then there's an enrichment hub that offers more of an asynchronous way to have ongoing exchange around a topic. It could be artistic, it could be creative, it could be scholarly, it could be collaborative. It's something you want to collaborate and engage attendees of the conference on. This is really something that's up to your imagination, and we'll have a slide about it in just a minute. But let me go through a couple more kinds of options, which are the pre-conference workshop and then the main program workshop. Okay, so these are going to be two types of skill building sessions. One is a workshop format that's within the regular program of the conference. So it's going to occur during the regular conference days. It's going to be similar to a panel in some ways in that it can include up to 4 presenters for 60 minutes. But the focus is going to be more on audience engagement with the potential for direct instruction around a topic, or skill building or opportunity to practice a skill. And then the other is a pre-conference workshop. And this can also include up to 4 presenters or facilitators, but it's going to have more flexibility in terms of format and duration. So it will occur the day before the conference kicks off. It's going to be an optional add-on for attendees to participate in if they opt into that. And these pre-conference workshops can really therefore best be suited for deeper dives into a kind of knowledge or skill. They can run longer than an hour. You'll know in advance, right, how many people have registered for them, so you can really plan small group and specific activities with participants. And you want to think of these things as options that would be really appealing for attendees to add on to their conference experience, to build their knowledge skills in the form of a kind of short course. So let's talk for a minute about enrichment hubs in specific, because this is a more novel form that ASBH has developed. And we want to just give you a sense of what might be possible, but really this is open to your creativity and imagination. We invite you to look at the ASBH website for more details about these projects, but here's some images of past enrichment hub examples. So one was called A Refractory Gaze, and it was an exhibit of 3 paintings of medical students by Jiang Li to explore and deconstruct the idea of the medical gaze. And here you see the artist, right, and the paintings on the slide. And then there was another project called Legacy by Gretchen Case, and it was a durational performance in which the artist spent an entire conference day sewing initials of her former medical students into a lab coat and inviting attendees to join her to create a visible legacy of the transformational work of medical humanities education. So really, again, you're seeing this tangible product invitation to conference participants to also produce alongside the artist and scholar here. Other 2025 enrichment hubs included our collaborative planning and response groups that launched for the first time last year, as well as a musical workshop and some storytelling events. So this is a really broad category. It's a place for submitters to propose programming that you might not normally see at a conference. It could be an open mic, a service project, or a collaborative art piece, or whatever else you dream up for us.
Okay, so I will talk a bit about how to select a category. So on the side of this slide, you have a list of different categories. These categories have been put together very thoughtfully by the program committee based on the number of submissions that we have had in the past, as well as the expertise of peer reviewers. Each category is well defined on the ASBH website, but I'll go over a few of these definitions and also name which category is new this year. So first we have clinical ethics, which is often concerned with clinical ethics consultation practice, but could be more broad and consider issues such as end of life, pediatric ethics, or surrogate decision making. Diversity, disparity, and inclusion are proposals that include issues such as health disparities, diverse perspectives, identity, and inclusion. Proposals related to education and interprofessionalism. So this is a bit of a broader category. It's linked to pedagogy, methods linked to pedagogy, education. The education could be at different levels: undergraduate, graduate, professional students, different disciplines of students. Health humanities includes proposals from arts, literature, history, culture. So all the disciplines of the humanities is in that category. Law, public health policy, as well as organizational ethics has three very distinct categories put together, but they are more systemic, broader issues linked to ethics. Philosophy are proposals that primarily look at a topic through a philosophical lens. It could also be using a specific philosophical theory as well as a specific philosopher. The category religion is the brand new category this year. So, although it does overlap with a lot of different topics, this specific category will focus on religious frameworks as well as in the analysis or topics that engage with religious theory or methodologies. And last is research ethics and social sciences. Again, two slightly different categories put together. Research ethics proposal focus on ethical issues in the planning, conduct, and oversight of research. It also can include issues related to responsible conduct of research. And social science includes proposals with methodologies that are more empirical. So things like anthropology, economics, political science, psychology, and sociology are central in that category. Now, what if your proposal applies to many different categories? And mine have in the past. Often they'll even apply to 2 or 3 categories. For example, if I put in a proposal on how to be more, how to promote inclusion in pragmatic clinical trials, that is a research ethics topic, but it's also a topic that could go in diversity, disparity, and inclusion. So, what I would ask myself is who would be the ideal reviewer for this proposal and what is their background? So, if in the abstract I want to focus mainly on how to see inclusion in a different way, maybe I should apply for or put my proposal in diversity, disparity, and inclusion. If the implications are more central to research ethics and I'm diving into that literature more significantly, perhaps I should go more in research ethics. You could look at what categories similar proposals have been in the past. But if we believe that a proposal does not really fit in our category, often it will be flagged by peer reviewers as being better in another category. So even if you do make a mistake and don't put it in the right category, we will make sure to change that and send that proposal to our colleagues. So next slide.
Okay, so now that we've talked about all the different formats, we're going to move into how to actually go about writing your abstract. We're going to talk through some best practices, and then we'll show you some examples. So some best practices, kind of things we've seen reviewing abstracts over the years, common pitfalls. I would say one of the main ones is get to the point. It's very common, when you're talking about your topic, everyone's excited about it. You want to give us all this background and explain. But you don't want that to be the majority of your abstract. It takes away from your work if you're talking about other work that came first. So you can definitely include some background. We want you to, provide that context. Not everyone's going to be familiar with your specific area of expertise, but it shouldn't be, the whole abstract. Maybe a third, a fourth, definitely no more than a half of the abstract, depending on kind of what your topic is. And you'll see that in the upcoming examples. So once you've kind of explained to us why this matter or what the background is, you want to explain why this matters and help draw it back to your participants, your audience. Not everyone is going to be in your specific area of expertise, but why does it still matter to them? Maybe they're outside your institution, they work in some different field. Why is your work important to them? How is your research generalizable? Basically, why do we care? And so you want to explain why your work matters. And I think that's a real important kind of crux of everything. Then, you really want to delve into what you're sharing, right? So if this is a paper presentation, then what is your argument? What's your opinion? What is the perspective that you're sharing and that you're adding? And make sure that you're really clear and highlighting those main points for us of what's going to be, new about your research that you're sharing. On the other hand, if this is more of an empiric traditional research proposal where you've collected data, maybe it's a work in progress, maybe you have that data, but make sure that you're discussing your methodology. And if you have those results, share those results in your abstract. And then some of how you write your abstract is going to also vary with what the type is. So if this is a panel presentation, a good part of your abstract should also be explaining who is going to be on the panel. We want to know, what are those different perspectives that you're bringing? You want to make sure that you don't do any identifying information that disqualifies your abstract immediately. So you don't want to say they're from XYZ University, but you can say from an academic hospital, from a community hospital, a sociologist, a ethicist, a clinician, all those different things to clarify kind of who those people are. But you don't want to identify them specifically. So how your kind of approach your abstract is going to vary a bit based off of what the type is. And now we'll show you a couple different examples of different types of abstracts. So we can move on to the next slide.
Great. Thanks so much for that nice setup. So since Brian couldn't be here, I am honored to present his abstract here. And keep in mind, these will be available afterwards, so don't feel like you have to frantically read all of this. But as we have here this nice color coding, the red is the context. And note here again that we don't want to spend too much time on the context. And some of this red here is actually context that is really setting us up for the why it matters and the approach. And you really want to make sure that you focus on why it matters, because although people are going to be familiar with your topic, they may not be familiar with all of the details. So even if you send it to the right category, they may not be exactly familiar with every little area that you're researching. So we have here, get your why it matters in early, right? So we have context. The opioid crisis is a big problem, and here's why. 100,000 deaths yearly, why it matters from the get-go. There's some more background here, some more context going on here. But notice in some of this context, there's also the ethical issues that are being unpacked here. So it's not just context. There's issues about capacity for decision-making is unclear. Even if the person has the capacity to consent, motivational differences relative to their real self. So there's issues for ethicists. So some of this is not just background that's related to other people's views. This is really setting us up for Brian's approach and perspective, which is what we want to hear about as reviewers, because we want to know what you're going to say. And that's the blue here. That's where we're getting to the meat of it. And this is where we as reviewers get really excited, because we say, oh, this is the good stuff. Now we can see what they're going to say. And so see how that nice blue chunk there. And then at the end, Brian does a nice job of saying again, hey, this is why it matters. I'm going to make these recommendations, and these are going to be supported, and these are going to be adopted by folks. And this is why we should all care. So again, the take-home message of why we should care. Next slide.
Okay, hi everyone. We're now going to discuss an example of an abstract for a flash presentation. And as a reminder, this is there's only one speaker for a flash presentation, and that speaker's time is limited to 5 minutes. Flash presentations, remember, are a great way to talk about works in progress or developing projects. So this means that it's an entirely appropriate place for you to come and talk about an initiative that isn't complete, especially if you wish to receive feedback from the bioethics community. So since the time is limited, you do want to demonstrate that you can present this information quickly or within the time allotted. So think carefully about the scope of what you wish to discuss. In this example by Liza Marie Johnson, you see that the abstract wisely starts with context. It then describes the approach and perspective. Remember, reviewers are reading many abstracts, so clear writing really helps us out. You'll see that this author starts their approach section with "this session will." That's a great way to flag to the reviewer that you're about to talk about the goals of the session. The abstract ends with the reasons why this presentation matters. So let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so here we have an example of an abstract for a panel presentation. Remember that we discussed earlier how a panel may have 2 to 4 speakers and a full hour of time. And remember to please anonymize your description of the panelists, along with anonymizing all content within the abstract. If you don't do that, sadly, your abstract cannot be considered, and we really do want you to come and present your work. So please do be sure to meet this criteria. Panels are unique in that they bring about multiple perspectives. So when you're building your panel, when you have an idea you'd like to come to ASBH and discuss, think about how you're going to choose the people on the panel that are going to bring multiple perspectives. Think about those who are going to each bring a distinctive viewpoint. In this case, the title of the panel was How Psychedelics Challenge Core Assumptions About Medicine, Ethics, and Humanities. And you will see, just like in the previous examples, we begin with context. And then after context, we jump right into why it matters. And then we describe how the panel takes shape. Who's going to be a part of this discussion? And why does it matter to the audience? We will, in this kind of an abstract, it makes a lot of sense to say the first panelist will, the second panelist will, the third panelist will, and really lay it out for us why each one of these people matters to the presentation. And then you close out with some kind of an approach or perspective, or wrapping up reasons why it matters. Okay, let's move to the next slide.
Okay, wonderful. You heard earlier about Gretchen Case's Enrichment Hub. And so this is an example of the actual abstract that she submitted for that Enrichment Hub. And these types of abstracts may look a little different because the enrichment hubs are different than standard papers, which is what I presented beforehand. But it still has these same features: context, why it matters, and approach. So all of the abstracts are going to have those 3 core elements. And they're going to be presented pretty much in that same order of context, why it matters, and approach. So we start off again with giving some background. She tells us about this course that she taught, and then she tells us why it matters. And then she goes on to tell us about the approach she's going to take. What is she going to do? Now, note how the why it matters might look a little different in this sort of enrichment hub, because she's not aiming to make an academic argument in the same sort of way, because an enrichment hub can have a very different format. It's not a timed event in the same way that a paper is, or a panel. So she's going to spend all day. This is an endurance project here. But so these abstracts can be quite diverse in their format. So there's not really the same formula as there are for, say, standard papers. But we wanted to present this to show you how these can vary quite differently. Next slide, please.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Now we want to just take a few minutes to look at some frequently asked questions here. First, can you have more than one presenter for your paper? The answer to that is going to be no. Paper and flash presentations are going to be limited to one formally designated presenter, although a co-author may jump in to help present on the day if the proposal is accepted by the program committee. Second question here. Do all presenters listed need to register? All presenters who are affiliated with the proposal, except for non-presenting co-authors of paper or flash sessions, will be expected to register and attend the conference in person, again, if that proposal is going to be accepted. If you're interested in including someone that wouldn't traditionally attend the conference or take part in the ASBH community, such as like a patient or a community organizer or some other relevant stakeholder, you may request a guest speaker designation for them, which would allow the presenter complimentary access to attend that particular session. Third question, is there a list of required information to submit? Yes, there is a list of every requirement for each session type listed on the proposals page of the ASBH website. Next question is, can an affinity group submit a proposal together? Yes, affinity groups can work together to submit a proposal on behalf of the group for an additional concurrent session meeting at the actual conference. Next here, what happens to my proposal if I include identifying information? We've talked a little bit about this already with some of the previous slides. Here, if you include any identifying information in your abstract, such as names or institutions, your proposal will be automatically rejected and will not be reviewed. How do I know that I've submitted everything? If you have completed all the required tasks in the proposal submission portal, you will need to click the blue submit button at the top of the page to officially submit your presentation. You will only receive a confirmation email once you press submit. So if you don't have that confirmation email, then you need to go back and check to make sure your proposal was fully submitted. And so what happens to my proposal after I've submitted? After you submit your proposal, ASBH staff will check to ensure proposals comply with the two submission rule and are properly anonymized. After that, proposals will be randomly assigned to 3 qualified peer reviewers per submission. Now, the various category leaders will review those proposals after the peer reviewers, and the program committee then will perform a final overall review and ultimately decide whether to include a given proposal in the conference schedule. And so what if I need to change my proposal's designated presenter or presenters after I submit? Well, in this case, if the proposal is accepted and you need to adjust your presentation roster, you may email ASBH staff to update your presentation accordingly. Please note, though, that the decision notification will be sent out to the address affiliated with the proposal at the time of submission. So if you believe your affiliation may change this spring or early summer, be sure to list a personal address as the contact so the ASBH can communicate with you appropriately. Well, thank you so much, Lori, for leading that session there. And I just want to encourage those of you who are in attendance, if you have other questions, feel free to email us through the ASBH website. We'll certainly try to get back with you as soon as we possibly can to address a specific question that emerges as you get into this process that was not either fully covered, or if you need more specific detail than was covered in our webinar this morning, afternoon, depending on your location. I also wanted to take a moment to echo the program chair, Lori, about becoming a member. If you are not, membership does have its benefits, and I certainly would encourage you to be part of this community of scholars and researchers and clinicians and practitioners as we try to tackle hard issues together. I'd like to thank the 2026 Program Committee for their time and expertise and experience and sharing that with you in this space. I would also like to thank Lauren Winters, who's kind of behind the scenes that you don't see her face right now, but she is the ASBH Education and Operations Manager. Also, kudos to the committee chair, Lori Bruce, and all the work that she puts in along with the committee as well in kind of guiding and leading this process. And most importantly, I just want to take a moment to thank you for being here, for all the work that you do and that you're engaged in now, and for the imagination that you can bring to our space. We really hope to see you in person at our 2026 annual meeting of the American Society for Bioethics and Humanities in Indianapolis, Indiana on October 14th through 17th. If you make it there, we will look for you, but you also look for us, and be sure to say hello, get to know folks, and let's just continue in this good work together. Thanks so much for your time, and we look forward to the days ahead.